Now, whether you're a true athlete or if you're someone with diabetes just getting started on your quest for health and well-being, we all need to dial in our mindset, our nutrition and fitness know-how. And Bravest is about being motivated every day to do just that. Ultimately, we'll help you figure out how to do this effectively and continue to elevate yourself over and over again so you can make your greatest contribution to the people around you. So what we're embarking on is not just a selfish venture, and yes, we'll be zeroing in on how to take our health to the next level, but it's truly about contribution to something much greater outside of ourselves. That was my voice you heard there. I'm Craig Kasper, and thanks for joining us for the very first episode of the Bravest podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to the very first episode of the Bravest podcast. My name is Craig and I'll be your host and your partner in crime as we navigate this journey together. Now this episode will be a short one, but I thought it would make a lot of sense to start off by providing you with some personal background and also spend some time sharing my hopes and my goals regarding the podcast, as well as our new website, which if you haven't already been there, is thebravestlife.com. Now, the basic idea behind the website and podcast is to launch something I've had in the works for a very long time. In fact, this is an idea that started to take shape in a New York City hospital bed close to 20 years ago. And I'll share more about that in a moment, but the bottom line is that it's taken a while for me to feel comfortable enough to release my story into this already noisy landscape of health and wellness. And let's face it, we're bombarded with messaging all the time through social media, through traditional media, and the volumes of podcasts that are already out there. I simply want to make sure I'm putting something out there that has true value and relevance and also has the potential to make a difference in the lives of those touched by diabetes. So after a great deal of goal planning and soul searching over the past year or so, I came to the realization that there's no time like the present to move past any hesitation and uncertainty. And as I thought more about what I was really hoping to accomplish, it became clear that the real story supporting Bravest should be one of personal evolution. Not just my own personal evolution, but also the journey I'm gearing up to facilitate for you through the conversations we'll be having on the show as time goes on. So what is the show all about? Well, in a nice neat package, Bravest is about helping you live your healthiest life possible despite any obstacles you might face along the way. And while we all face obstacles on a day-to-day basis, on the show we'll be focusing on attacking life with diabetes from the inside out. But it's more than just that. Bravest is really about developing a blueprint to help anyone overcome obstacles in their life to achieve health in mind, in body, and in spirit. Now, whether you're a true athlete or if you're someone with diabetes just getting started on your quest for health and well-being, we all need to dial in our mindset, our nutrition and fitness know-how. And Bravest is about being motivated every day to do just that. Ultimately, we'll help you figure out how to do this effectively and continue to elevate yourself over and over again so you can make your greatest contribution to the people around you. So what we're embarking on is not just a selfish venture, and yes, we'll be zeroing in on how to take our health to the next level, but it's truly about contribution to something much greater outside of ourselves. Now, I want to share more details about my personal story in a moment, but here's the 10,000-foot view. I've lived with type 1 diabetes for almost 2 decades. I'm the kind of person who's always in search of relevant and credible information. And I also thrive on motivation and insights to dial in my nutrition, my fitness, and mindset. But even before my diagnosis with type 1, I've loved a personal challenge, and I've always been obsessed with how I can do better today than I did yesterday. Now, sometimes this mindset has worked against me, but I'm also a strong believer in learning through resistance and growing through the possibility of failure. And this is a theme we'll come back to time and time again in the podcast. Now, over the years, my experience with type 1 has provided me with a never-ending stream of lessons about myself and the world around me. And as I'm sure some of you will understand, the amazing thing about type 1 is that while there might be patterns in our health that we can observe regarding how nutrition and exercise interact with any number of other variables, it's really an ever-changing science experiment. And just when you think you have it all down, Something jumps in your way, and all of a sudden you feel as though you're scrambling for control. So, the launch of Bravest has been inspired by ideas and questions that I think about constantly. I'm really curious about the ever surfacing choices we have to either view the obstacles we face as actual opportunities to make ourselves better, make ourselves stronger, make ourselves faster, versus seeing the world covered with insurmountable barriers. Or if we take a page from psychologist and researcher Carol Dweck's best-selling book Mindset, do we view our circumstances with a fixed mindset or a growth mindset? Do we view diabetes or any other health issues as something that limits us, or do we see the countless opportunities for growth and contribution the disease might offer us? And to take that idea even further, once we've shifted to more of a growth mindset over time, how do we dive in consistently to optimize our health so we are the best version of ourselves possible? And finally, how do we take that version of ourselves and make our mark on the world in the most effective way possible? In addition to my personal obsession with how we shift mindset towards better health, we really have to address the 800-pound gorilla in the room that's screaming for our attention. As a society, we have an epidemic bubbling under the surface. Now, globally, the incidence of diabetes is quietly growing at an alarming rate. If we take a look at the latest statistics from the World Health Organization, 422 million adults around the globe were living with diabetes in 2014. And that's compared to 108 million in 1980. In the US, we're approaching a level of 10% of the population having diabetes. And what's crazy is that most of those cases are type 2, which is for the most part preventable and even reversible in most cases through nutrition and exercise. Now, regardless of type and regardless of age, there's a serious need for education, for inspiration, and more importantly, action, so the growing number of people facing diabetes every day can become as healthy as possible. And this is where I'm hoping my efforts through the bravestlife.com and the conversations we'll have on this podcast will make its real impact. Now, because of my personal story with type 1, at times we're going to be looking at the world through the lens of my experiences. Now, that said, the conversations, the insights, and the information will no doubt be available to you whether you're type 1, a type 2, or a parent or family member of someone who manages diabetes. The information will even be useful to you if you don't have any connection to diabetes at all. In my humble opinion, if we can help you fine-tune the way you think about nutrition, training, and longevity to live your healthiest life possible every day, despite the real or perceived obstacles you might face, whether that might be diabetes or something else, we've really accomplished our goal here. And in order to do that, I'd like to focus our conversations on talking to the groundbreakers and the thinkers in the world of diabetes health and wellness, nutrition, psychology, and even athletics. We'll also be meeting people outside of the diabetes community that have important concepts and ideas regarding health and wellness that we will bring in and apply to our world. As time goes on, we'll also be talking to some of the most remarkable people who have taken what might be perceived as knockdown and life-changing experiences and flipped the tables to live the highest version of themselves possible. It's not that they have simply overcome those obstacles and now they're totally okay. It's just the opposite. They're really very much human, and they still come up against big challenges every day. The difference is that they view and manage those challenges differently now. It's the beauty of learning from the daily process that they're wide open to experiencing. A process of simply putting one foot in front of the other every single day, even when they don't want to. And what's really interesting to me is how many of those individuals have then used their experiences in massively selfless ways to change the world around them for the better. Now, personally, I've always found inspiration in those kinds of stories, so my hope is for us to collectively elevate those who are truly doing things that have the potential to elevate our world as a whole. Together, we'll learn from those people and what it takes to increase our own ability to attack life every day. We'll use that fuel to face our own obstacles and then rise up to push down the excuses, no matter how small those excuses may be. And then we'll deconstruct and then reconstruct ourselves. It's only when we do this consistently that we have a fighting chance to take on the world and make our impact in the most effective way possible. So, who am I and where do I get off asking you to come along with me on this journey? Everyone has their story, but this one is mine. In a nutshell, I've been a healthcare provider for about 20 years. I'm not a physician, so I will not be offering medical advice, but I do have a master's degree. I have a doctorate, and I was a clinical fellow at one of the top research and teaching hospitals here in New York City. I've published research in my clinical area, and I've even been on pretty much every major TV channel and media outlet talking about health. Now, for most of my life, I've tried to follow what I thought was a healthy diet, and that's in air quotes. And I worked hard to take fairly good care of myself, but then about 17 years ago, I ran into a health issue that challenged my view on life and also changed me forever. About a year into my life postgraduate school, I was about 6 foot 2 inches tall, 205 pounds, so I was at the peak of my fitness. Then I was blindsided by a list of health issues, including sudden hearing loss in my right ear, I had a leak under my retina, and then rapidly lost about 30 pounds in less than 30 days without trying to. It actually got to the point where my clothes just didn't fit me anymore. I became massively lethargic, and I couldn't maintain my normal workout routine no matter how hard I tried. I would eat full meals, and then within a half hour, I was starving again and went back for more. And the more I ate, the hungrier I was. The sheer volume of food I consumed should have helped me pack on the pounds, but instead, I was steadily wasting away. Every day I would wake up and look in the mirror, but for some reason, I just didn't make the connection that something was really off. And as a new clinician with a demanding job in a very big city, I played the denial game. In fact, I was actually an expert at it. I thought to myself, how could I possibly show any weakness now? I'm young, and I've got a ton of new responsibilities. I just can't possibly slow down. So I decided to push on, and I wrote the whole thing off to the stress of life as a grown-up. The unfortunate reality is that the symptoms that I ignored almost killed me. And it wasn't until I started hallucinating on the subway that I realized I really needed help. Now, maybe I wasn't very smart. Maybe I was looking back on it, my brain was not functioning properly. But there is one thing I have noticed about many healthcare providers. As well-intentioned as we are, and as much as we work to provide the highest quality recommendations and information to our patients, we simply do not apply that mindset to our own health and well-being at times. So I was certainly in denial, but there was also a bit of strong ego mixed in, which can be a very dangerous combination. It got to a point where I couldn't stuff enough food in my face fast enough, and I continued to lose weight. I couldn't fill my body with enough water, and my runs to the bathroom happened about every 15 minutes. And at that point, reality was really slapping me in the face, but I was barely listening. And working in a hospital, it's not that difficult to get some lab work done. So after a month of being sick and tired, I took that first step, and I had a colleague draw some blood, hoping something would show up that would explain what I was going through. Now, within 2 hours of that blood test, I got the call that would change everything for me. I was told that my blood sugars were over 800, and I was encouraged to get to the emergency room for treatment. Now, for those of you who might be listening who might not be familiar with blood glucose measures, normal levels range anywhere between 80 to 120. 800 is completely off the charts, and at that level, doctors start to get concerned about the possibility of some serious damage happening to the body. So as I hung up that phone, I realized I was entering into a new chapter of my life. And for those of us with type 1, we know it's not something we can avoid. We're genetically predisposed to this disease, and something in the environment triggers a cascade of events which leads to our body's immune system to attack our pancreas. When this happens, our pancreas doesn't produce enough insulin, and the insulin is a critical hormone necessary for our body to properly use the food we take in for energy. And without insulin, all the cells of our body do not get the energy and nourishment they need, and the glucose in our blood rises without much control. The consequences, if undiagnosed or untreated, can really be disastrous. So that afternoon in the emergency room, I was given my first injection of insulin, and I had to come to grips with the fact that that one injection would be the first of thousands upon thousands of needles I would have to put in my body over the course of my lifetime. Then once the nurses started to pump me full of IV fluids, I literally started to feel the life come back into my fragile body. I received a very important lesson at that moment. I learned that when life gradually slips away from you over the course of time, the crappy state you slowly drop into every single day simply becomes your new norm. And after time, you slip so far away from what healthy really looks like, you don't even realize how unhealthy you really are. And at that time, I was massively unhealthy. Now that night, I slept better than I had slept in over a month. I had no worries. I didn't even think much about the actual diagnosis that was handed to me earlier that day. I just wanted to get back to some level of feeling good again, regardless of what it took. Now, the next morning I was yelled at actually because I was caught walking the hallways of the hospital carrying my IV pole over my shoulder. I thought it was much easier than constantly untangling the IV line from the wheels, and I just wanted to get out of the hospital and on with my new reality. But before I was allowed to leave the hospital, the doctors and the nurses had very different plans for me. They had to make sure my body was stable, and that took almost a week. And within that week, I learned how to test my blood sugars, give myself injections, handle potential emergencies, and also to look at my diet and nutrition in a very different way. At that point, I quickly accepted my new role as a pincushion and a daily science experiment. They say what doesn't kill you will make you stronger, and at that moment, I was starting to understand what that really meant. It's amazing the levels of strength you can reach when your back is up against the wall. At that point, my focus was 100% on piecing myself back together one step at a time and trying to become stronger than I was before I got sick. Now, looking back, the foundation for this very podcast was hatched in that hospital bed. The idea sprouted from two questions that continued to circle in my head. And those questions were, one, how do I get through this life-changing experience, put myself back together, and take this breakdown experience and flip it to become my breakthrough experience? And two, and this is equally as important, what can I learn from all of this and really understand what it means to help others with their own breakdown to figure out their own breakthrough moments? And those questions serve as a basis for my thought process to this day. So here we are, full circle. Although this is a journey that started almost 20 years ago for me, it's a journey that I feel I'm still starting in many ways. It's a true work in progress, but I am committed to asking the right questions of the world to provide all of us with an experience that will positively impact our lives. Hopefully what we're doing will encourage you to either consider your own journey, or if you're already on that path, help you with the daily internal dialogue to ensure you stay true to the path that you're already on. Now, in the upcoming weeks, months, and beyond, I'll be working very hard to bring you conversations that will educate and empower, and that's great, but the ultimate goal is to support your process in taking action each and every day, no matter how small those steps you take might be. So wherever you are on the path to fine-tune your nutrition, your fitness, and simply breaking through to a higher level of being, we'll definitely have something for you here on the podcast as well as the website. Now, living the bravest life is about becoming the healthiest version of yourself, regardless what life might throw across your path. It's about discovering your personal capabilities, maximizing on them, and starting to move the needle forward each and every day to better health and wellness. It's about becoming the person you want to become and creating the impact you wish to create in the world and not being apologetic about any of it. So I'd like to thank you for joining me here today for this very first episode of the podcast. I truly appreciate the fact that you're here for day one of this new movement and the foundation of what I hope will grow into an amazing community of people supporting each other on the path to health, wellness, and impact. Now be sure to check back in about a week or so where we'll start off the conversation with our first guest, and I could not think of a more appropriate person to help us kickstart this adventure. We'll be talking to endurance athlete and co-founder of the Diabetes Sports Project, Eric Tozer. Now, Eric is a truly amazing guy with a mission to empower other Type 1 athletes, and I'm certain you'll find as much inspiration through Eric's work as I did. Now, although his story continues to develop, he's really making a huge mark on the world of athletics for those with diabetes. Now, that episode will be available next week, so definitely check back for that one, which will be episode number 2 of the podcast. Now, finally, I'm looking forward to hearing comments and suggestions from you guys. If you have guest ideas or topic suggestions, let's start that conversation. You can get in touch with me easily through the contact page on our website, which is thebravestlife.com/contact, or you can find me on social media, and the links are on the website as well. Thanks again for being here and listening. It will be exciting to see where this journey takes all of us. I'm Kasper. This is The Bravest Life, and I will see you next time.